Kitty Queen Gamer said you found me. Kitty Queen Gamer said what is the profile picture?
Default.
Kitty Queen Gamer said on Twitch. Kitty Queen Gamer said mine's.
Girl with the blue hair.
Kitty Queen Gamer said supposed to be Carol with blue hair.
Cool.
Kitty Queen Gamer said yes, that's me. Kitty Queen Gamer said hooray, thank you. Kitty Queen Gamer said okay, go to sleep. Kitty Queen Gamer said yeah, that's when she had blue hair, she had brown now. Kitty Queen Gamer said sleep well. Kitty Queen Gamer said I gotta get some sleep. Kitty Queen Gamer said I have kick as well. Kitty Queen Gamer said good night.
Go to bed, yeah. Go to bed. What's this? Okay.
Kitty Queen Gamer said I'll talk to you next time, I'm so sleepy. Kitty Queen Gamer said okay. Kitty Queen Gamer said face red droopy eyes, face red droopy eyes. Kitty Queen Gamer said I just wanted to say hey.
Appreciate you coming in here. Even though you
Okay.
Don't drink the blood. It is.
Deja vu is that weird, fleeting feeling that you've lived through a moment before.
Oh my God.
I'm talking about my uncle, nigga. Alright.
No, no, it's not. I want to see it. Let loose your. Okay, I'm gonna sing. Broccoli animations. Broccoli animations.
You want to know what I'm most excited about this summer? No more high-waisted bikinis or one pieces. So nobody.
In college, I fell in love with two women, Ember and Isla. They were both beautiful, and I knew they'd do anything for me. Before graduation, I needed to make a choice. In a way, I felt a deeper connection with Isla. She made me laugh in a way that Ember never could. Or just wasn't compatible. However, Ember was quite rich. In the end, I chose her. Isla did not take the news well. She was heartbroken. She cut us both out of her life and promised me that I'd regret my decision. Ember and I married soon after that. And for the next 10 years, I didn't regret my decision at all. Ember took over her family business, so I didn't need to work. I could just stay home, living the good life. Everything was easy. But with Ember at work all the time, I got a little lonely sometimes. Man has needs. So, about a year ago, I started fooling around with my next-door neighbor, Helen. She came over a couple times a week, always in the middle of the day when Ember was working. One day, Helen and I were playing in the living room when a huge woman appeared at our door. I could see her through the window, staring at us. I freaked out, worried that this was one of Ember's friends. Helen hurried out the back door while I went through the front to ask who this stranger was. Gross little way and very dirty. Looked like she could have been trying to let herself go. You're cheating on Ember? She knew my wife's name. Panicked, I started making excuses for myself, telling her that she misinterpreted what she saw. She interrupted me, a look of disgust on her pimply face. You don't remember me, do you? I didn't. You would have remembered meeting such a gross person. She refused to introduce herself, forcing me to take a long look at her and figure it out myself. As I stared into her eyes, I was filled with shock. This was Isla. She used to be so youthful looking, so beautiful. Isla? What happened to you? That was definitely not the right thing to say. She shoved me backwards and barged inside. Then she flopped her fat body onto the couch and waited for me to join her.
Oh, man.
You made me into this. Waited for me to speak, but I didn't know what to say. Sorry for what she'd become. That doesn't mean I lose all sense of hygiene. When I didn't say anything,
Get down.
screaming. She said,
Wait, down.
worse. Tell her about my affair so that I'd lose her too. I felt terrified. I couldn't let this woman ruin my perfect marriage. I dropped down on my knees. Please, you can't tell her. Is there anything I can do to change your mind? A dark smile spread across her cold, sore, riddled lips. The only way to stop me from telling Ember about your affair is if your affair is with me. Since you're already down there, why don't you put that pretty little mouth to use? She wanted me to. Oh no. I was disgusted. Based on her smell, I knew she didn't take care of her hygiene at all. I felt like throwing up. But I did what she asked. I had to. Afterwards, she left, and I took a long shower. I gargled mouthwash for 7 minutes. Every day that week, she came back demanding the same thing. I always did what she asked, and I always felt horrible afterward. The 4th time she came back, I realized that she wasn't going to stop. She was using me, and she delighted in my obvious revulsion. Couldn't do this anymore. As she stood in front of me and demanded that I drop to my knees, I grabbed the lamp next to me and slammed it against her head. I didn't mean to kill her. I wasn't sure what I wanted to happen, but that one hit was all it took. She dropped to the ground with a grunt. I'd killed her. I was mostly in shock when I wrapped her in a blanket, dragged her body to my car, and dumped her in the reservoir. I tied her to a bunch of rocks so she'd sink to the bottom. So fat. LOL. Then I went back home, cleaned everything up, and pretended like nothing had happened. The police found her body 3 days later. Ember heard about it on the news. She came home in tears and told me everything. Even though Isla had been out of our lives for so long, Ember still felt terrible. Who could do something so horrible to a sweet, beautiful girl like Isla? Isla wasn't sweet. She definitely wasn't beautiful anymore. I tried to comfort my wife, but I got tongue-tied. I think I finally felt guilty for what I'd done. I didn't feel anything when I disposed of her body, but now all these negative feelings were hitting me all at once. Ember could see how upset I was. She hugged me and said, "It's okay. I'm sure the police will find her killer very soon. They always do." That was the worst thing she could have told me. Ember didn't go to work for the rest of the week. She could see how panicked and shaky I was, so she thought that I needed her support. She didn't know that her decision to stay home made everything harder for me. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't say anything. I was a nervous wreck.
Which you have time for 0 out of 10 minutes. Fortunately, DoorDash knows all your hotspots, so you can always get the best of what's around. We wish you the best of luck with that. Shake up your dinner routine. Order with DoorDash.
Giant, you won't believe what I just found. Have you heard about Royal Kingdom?
Royal Kingdom.
Brand new puzzle game.
Not interested.
The game
After days of this, she finally forced me to sit down and talk. Nothing is sympathetic. Rowan, Isla's death has really affected you, and I think I know why. I'm going to ask you something, and you have to be completely honest with me, okay? In that moment, I knew that she suspected me of the murder. There were no other explanations. I nervously waited for her question. Honey, did you love her? That made me laugh out loud. No, of course not. She was disgusting. She wasn't disgusting. She was beautiful and kind. Back then. But in the last 10 years, she got really gross. Ember's eyes narrowed in suspicion, and that's when I knew I blew it. I told her before that I hadn't seen Isla since college, and now she knew that was a lie. I tried to think of an explanation, but nothing came to mind. I stammered for a while, which made me look really guilty, until finally I told her the truth. I killed her. I dumped her body in the lake. My wife's face went completely blank. Then she gave me a dim, sad smile and pulled me into an embrace. Don't worry. No one else has to know. Without saying anything else, she walked out of the house. I sat in silence for hours, replaying that conversation over and over in my head, until Ember came back with a wide smile on her face. She kissed me on the forehead and said that everything would be okay. Her company had close ties with the police department, and she paid them in both money and favors to declare Isla's death an accident. She basically helped me cover up a murder with no words of judgment and no strings attached. I know I should be happy, but ever since that moment I felt nothing but guilt and fear. Guilt for what I've done, and fear for what Ember will do next. I now know how deep her love goes, and how dark. This story is inspired from a real-life event. In March of 2025, a woman's body was discovered floating in the waters off Fort Totten, Queens, prompting an immediate investigation. A 911 call alerted authorities at around 11:15 a.m., and the NYPD Harbor unit swiftly brought the body ashore. Nearby, police located a car in a parking lot with blood on the driver's seat and a knife resting on the passenger side, potentially linked to the case. The woman's identity remained unknown, and the city medical examiner was tasked with determining the cause of death. The chilling discovery raised more questions than answers as the investigation continues.
Score any size Coca-Cola Freestyle for just $1 at Wawa. Flavor up at your next visit and discover your perfect drink. Or enjoy your regular favorite. Don't miss out on this and other limited time discounts. Savor a summer of savings. Gotta have a Wawa.
Wendy was my high school girlfriend. She was smart and nice, but I always knew that our relationship was temporary. Graduation was coming up, and she had all these big plans about going to one of the state colleges in California. That had always been her dream. I knew I'd never get accepted to one of those. I was just going to stay in Arizona and probably take classes at the community college. I didn't want to hold her back, so I figured that we'd go our separate ways. I even told her that. She understood. She knew that her dreams were more important than our relationship. To make her happy, though, I applied to all the same colleges she did, just in case. One day, I got home from school to find a stack of mail waiting for me. They were acceptance letters. I'd gotten into all 3 of Wendy's top schools. I couldn't believe it. I literally danced around the house in celebration before I called her to deliver the good news. When she answered the phone, I could tell she was crying. I got rejected everywhere. She was so upset that I couldn't tell her my good news. Instead, I stashed my acceptance letters in a drawer and asked if she wanted to come over and talk about it. When she showed up, she was an absolute wreck. Blotchy eyes, mascara down her face. She didn't even wipe the snot off her nose. I comforted her, like a good boyfriend, and told her that she'd be okay. She explained that she was so confident that she'd get accepted that she hadn't applied anywhere else. She thought her life was ruined. It took a while for me to calm her down. And when she finally did, she got this sad smile on her face. At least now we'll still be together. I couldn't hide my news anymore. I told her that I'd gotten accepted to all her dream colleges. I didn't know which one I was going to pick, but I was definitely going to go. Probably UCLA. That one had the best journalism program. She didn't say anything. Her face went completely blank. She stood up, wiped her eyes, and walked out of my house as if I wasn't there. She needed time to process her feelings, I guess. My parents came home a bit later, and I told them the good news. Dad happily agreed to pay for whatever wasn't covered by my scholarship. We had a celebration dinner and everything. I felt so freaking proud of myself. And for the rest of the evening, I didn't think about Wendy. Late that night, after I'd already gone to sleep, Wendy called me. Hello? You can't go! We argued for a while, and I reminded her that if the tables had been turned, I would have supported her move to California. It wasn't fair that she wanted me to pass up the opportunity. She got really whiny, saying that I was ruining her life. She accused me of taking her spot, even though we'd applied for completely different programs. No matter what I said, she kept repeating that she wouldn't let me go. It was my duty to stay here with her. I know it sounds harsh, but after an hour of listening to her whine into the phone, I finally had enough. I broke up with her and ended the call. When I went to school the next day, I absolutely dreaded seeing her again. I hoped she would avoid me, but nope. She was waiting for me in the parking lot, like she usually did. She walked over, a big smile on her face, and kissed me as if nothing had happened. What are you doing? Just taking care of my boyfriend. I was too weirded out to confront her, so I forced a smile and we walked into the school together. For the rest of the day, she was in a great mood, making jokes, chatting with friends, acting super affectionate. It felt like she was trying too hard. I told our friends about my plans to go to UCLA. They were all really excited for me. Wendy started acting really mad. And I got accepted too. We decided to live on campus in a cute little apartment. What are you talking about? She formed a laugh and then very quickly changed. This kind of behavior lasted for days. She kept telling people about non-existent plans we made for the future. Buying a new car, enrolling in the same classes, sharing a meal plan. It was just so weird. And whenever I confronted her about it, she'd start laughing and change the subject. I was really starting to think she'd lost it. I was so concerned that I called her mom. She knew about Wendy's rejection letters, but I guess he told her that we were both planning to stay in town and take community college classes together. I had to level with her. I explained that I was going to California. I even said that Wendy and I had broken up, but she kept acting like we hadn't. Her mom didn't say anything for a long time. Then she screamed into the phone, "You bastard! You stole her spot!"
What if life were just more? More rewards, more savings, more special offers. That's what new Fuel Rewards members get at Shell. Join to save 10 cents per gallon on your first fill, 20 cents per gallon on the second, 30 cents per gallon on the third, and enjoy everyday savings afterwards. Simple as that. The more you fill, the more you save. Join today, because life should be more rewarding.
Paradise is back with a new beach.
Good things are coming.
Life is worth living.
Goldens.
I got my inner knees done.
Paradise. New Mondays on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Wow. Her mom was just as crazy as her. I decided then and there that I needed to stay as far away from Wendy as possible. That evening, I stayed up in my room, calling the UCLA admissions office and officially accepting the offer. The lady was super nice and answered all my questions. She said that she was really impressed by my personal statements. I felt a little guilty because Wendy had actually written my personal statement for me. I didn't tell her that though. Hours later, Mom called me downstairs for dinner. She was in the kitchen, but Wendy was sitting at the table, a big smile on her face. Mom didn't know how Wendy had been acting the last few days. Hi, honey. I know it's rude, but I told her to leave. Not until I tell you my new idea. You're gonna love it. She stood up, pulled an electric razor from her pocket, and started shaving her head. Her long, blonde hair fell in clumps onto the dinner table. Since you never wanted to go to UCLA and they accepted you by mistake, then I'm going to take your spot. Don't you see? I'll pretend to be you. They'll never know. That's when my mom walked in with a platter of food. She dropped it onto the floor completely in shock. Wendy turned to her with crazy eyes. "Hi, Mom!" I literally had to pull her out of the house. She didn't show up to school after that. No one knew what happened to her. Her mom won't answer my questions. I'm just worried that when I arrive on campus in a couple months that I'll see her there pretending to be me. This story is loosely inspired from a real-life experience of one of our Broccoli Fam subscribers. This is what he said. Back in high school, I dated a girl for a few months. When I got into my dream college, the one I'd wanted since I was a kid, I was thrilled and went to share the news with her. A couple of weeks later, she told me that she'd been rejected from every college except the local community one, despite taking AP and language classes. Then, she said we should move to Florida to live with her grandma and apply to schools there. I told her I wasn't ready to relocate after just a few months of dating. That's when she gave me an ultimatum. Her or my dream school. I've worked hard my whole life. I excelled in school, participated in a bunch of clubs, and did all the cooking and cleaning at home. My parents died when I was really young, so my older brothers, Henry and Andrew, had to sacrifice a lot to keep our family afloat. Neither of them finished high school because they needed jobs to support us. Because of their help and my hard work, I was able to attend a prestigious university on a scholarship. I couldn't afford living in the dorms, though, so I had to stay with my brothers and commute every day. I was doing well with my classes, but I had trouble making friends. Most of my classmates were from ultra-rich families. They took one look at me in my thrift store clothes and knew that I wasn't one of them. I thought that I'd escaped all that judgmental bullying once I graduated from high school, but it was so much worse in college. I felt like a pariah. I didn't tell any of this to my brothers, though. They both worked so hard as construction workers, so I felt awkward unloading my minor problems on them. They could tell I was upset, though, especially Henry. He knew me better than anyone. One day, I came home from classes to find both my brothers waiting for me at the dinner table. Gia, you have to tell us what's bothering you. So I did. I unloaded everything on them. How everyone knew what I was for. How people avoided me and laughed behind my back. How I felt like a freak. I guess I was crying because he stood up and hugged me. Then he went back to Andrew. They whispered something to each other. But when I asked them what they were talking about, they refused to answer. All they said was, "Things will get better. Just hang in there." It was a weird conversation, but I didn't really think about it afterward. A week later, I came home from school to find Henry and Andrew excitedly waiting for me in the living room. They had a pile of clothes on the couch. "What are these?" "Presents for you. We got a huge discount." My brothers were friends with a bunch of delivery guys, so it wasn't unusual for them to bring home stuff that had fallen off the back of the truck, so to speak. However, they had never brought home such a huge amount of stuff at one time. They had dozens of outfits, all in my size, and each one looked new and expensive.
You've got a long to-do list. Thankfully, you have DoorDash, and top-rated shoppers will deliver groceries right to your door as if you picked them all yourself. Put your groceries in good hands. Order all your groceries with DoorDash.
I wrapped them both in a big hug and thanked them person. I rushed up to my room to try on each outfit. Miraculously, every single one fit me perfectly. When I went back downstairs to show them my favorite outfit, they were gone. Probably they had to get back to work. Alone in the house, I spent the next few hours studying. I had the news playing in the background just to help me concentrate. I wasn't really paying attention to the TV until a news report came on about a robbery. Two large men in ski masks robbed a high-end fashion store and made off with thousands of dollars of clothes. I looked at the screen. My heart was racing. They played security when it did the robbery. The two men were each armed with tasers. The was acting really intimidating. Even though I couldn't see their faces, it was Henry and Andrew. I watched in horror as my brothers threatened the poor shop assistants. When one man tried to stop them, Andrew tased him. The man fell to the floor, flopping around and whimpering. The robbers tased 3 employees during the robbery, including one man who suffered a heart attack. Police are requesting any information to help identify these men. I couldn't breathe. I was having a panic attack. My brothers had robbed that store because of me. And now someone was in a life and death situation. What was I going to do? I couldn't turn them in, but I couldn't stay silent about this. If they got away with it, then I'd feel guilty for the rest of my life. It took me a long time to catch my breath. After that, I couldn't concentrate on my textbook. I couldn't do anything besides sit there and wait for my brothers to come home. They didn't. I tried calling both their phones. They didn't answer. I was a nervous wreck. I didn't know if they were hiding out, if they had already been arrested, or if they'd simply run away. Then, hours later, they came back. They were both very drunk. "You're still awake? I thought you'd be asleep by now. How do you like the clothes?" Did you see the news? We were at a bar. We're just hanging out. Why? What news? So I told them that I knew what they did. And I told them that one of the workers was critical because of them. Andrew didn't say anything. He just kept his head down. But Henry absolutely freaked out. He hadn't realized that the man had died. He started babbling. I couldn't understand what he was saying. Then he turned to Andrew and focused all his panic and anger on him. "It's your fault. The tasers were your idea. You're the one who zapped him. You're the real monster." Henry dove at Andrew. He my brother's horse around before, but I'd never seen them actually fight. It was brutal. Henry pinned Andrew to the ground and punched him in the face. Andrew struggled to free himself, but he couldn't. So he pulled the taser out of his pocket and zapped Henry. Henry spazzed out and fell to the side, his head striking the edge of the coffee table. When he flopped onto the ground, he stopped moving. The shock of that moment sobered Andrew up. He crawled to our brother and shook his shoulders, but it was useless. Henry had a bloody gash on the side of his head, and his eyes were rolled back. Andrew's face was horrifyingly blank as he stood up, walked over our brother's dead body, and disappeared out the front door without saying a word. I checked to make sure Henry was dead. He was. Then I called 911 and tried to explain what happened. I was sobbing so hard that I don't think they understood me. But they sent someone anyway. 10 minutes later, the paramedics took Henry's body away, and an officer asked me for my statement. I told her everything as best as I could. It all happened so fast. Before I knew it, Henry's body was gone. The paramedics were gone. The policewoman was gone too, taking all my new clothes with her. This all happened a month ago. The police are still looking for Andrew. I promised to call them if he tried to contact me, but he hasn't. I also dropped out of school. My heart's not in it anymore. Besides, without my brothers, I need to work full-time to survive. This story is loosely inspired from a real-world event. On March 6th, 2025, a bold daylight theft rattled Midtown Manhattan. Around 1:15 p.m., two shoplifters entered Bloomingdale's on 3rd Avenue and 59th Street, swiping over $6,500 worth of clothing. When store employees attempted to intervene, one suspect brandished a sparking taser, threatening to shock anyone who tried to stop them. The duo, both wearing hooded jackets and sunglasses, fled the scene with their stolen goods. No injuries were reported, but the act left employees shaken. Police later released surveillance images of the suspects and appealed to the public for help in identifying the two men behind the brazen theft.
It's a beautiful day when all of a sudden, wrecking ball on the move! Anything could be a shutdown, as it won't last long, but not for too long. You may build empires, but in Monopoly Go, no landmark is safe. And get ready for revenge. But be prepared for surprises. Settle the score. Play now.
You won't believe it. Download Pocket FM and listen to my Vampire System for free now.
Mia was a beautiful woman, but she had some serious body issues. Her ex-husband Derek treated her horribly, constantly pointing out minor flaws and making her feel like an ugly whale that no one would ever love. The marriage ended 2 years ago, but the emotional scars remained. She met a new man, John, who finally made her feel like the smart, beautiful woman she really was. John and Mia loved each other dearly, and if things had been different, they would have married this December. Mia spent months planning the wedding. She wanted everything perfect. There was still a part of her whispering in the back of her brain, telling her that she didn't deserve someone like John. As the wedding got closer, she became more anxious. She was barely eating anything, trying to get as thin as possible. Everyone else could see that she was absolutely gorgeous, but when she looked at her reflection, she hated the image that looked back. She decided that she needed plastic surgery, just a little liposuction around the stomach and fillers on her butt. John had plenty of money, but she didn't dare ask him. Instead, she found a budget-friendly clinic that could give her everything she wanted at a fraction of the price. In her heart, she knew that this was a bad idea. The clinic itself was located in a run-down warehouse with no signage in the front. But still, she couldn't stop herself. When she arrived at her appointment, the doctor greeted her directly. No receptionists, no one else in the building at all, just her and an old man in a lab coat. He tried to calm her nerves and assure her that even though he no longer had his license, he was a great doctor. She didn't believe it, but she followed him into the operating room anyway. The doctor set her up on the table, administered the anesthesia, and she drifted off to sleep. She never woke up. Hours later, John came home from work. He had a particularly good day, landing 2 new accounts. He couldn't wait to tell his fiancée the good news. She wasn't home. He tried calling her phone, but she didn't answer. He checked the calendar to make sure she didn't have any appointments. After checking with her mother, he really started to worry. This wasn't like her at all. He called the police. They promised to help, but they didn't have a lot of information to go on. Eventually, John found an address written on a post-it note. He knew it was in a sketchy part of town, and there was some part of him that knew with absolute certainty that this was where she'd gone. He drove there right away, immediately nervous at the sight of the crumbling warehouse. Without any backup plan, and with no one knowing where he was, John stepped inside. The place was filthy. It looked like a makeshift medical office. The door was unlocked, but no one was there. He looked around the waiting room, wincing at the stains on the tile. Then he pushed his way into a hallway.
Once you choose the dragon you like, you have to feed it until it's all grown up. Then breed to get new ones, and discover more than 1,000 unique dragons in Dragon City. Play now and become a Dragon Master.
Let's take out this last wave here, and nice, we just got an upgrade. It's taking them out so much faster already, and we're getting way more money. Okay, we have enough for another upgrade. Let's go ahead and get it. Nice, we're just oiling them up. Let's go. This game is too easy. This is the top survival game of 2025, King Shot. You're the governor of a town, and it's your job to keep everybody alive. By day, build your base and manage your resources. And by night, defend your territory from waves of invaders. And I'm honestly willing to bet you won't get past night 2. But if you think you can, go ahead and tap this video to download King Shot for free today.
Finally, he heard a noise. Footsteps behind a door. He entered an operating room and saw what was left of his fiancée. Mia? His brain couldn't process what he was seeing. This was his beautiful fiancée, dead on a slab. It couldn't be possible. There had to be a mistake. This morning she'd been so full of life, and now she was gray, empty. I am so sorry for your loss. John spun around to see a man in a blood-stained lab coat. The butcher who had done this to the love of his life. The man stepped closer, explaining that Mia had a complication with her liposuction. He sounded guilty and regretful, but as he got closer, John could see the needle in his hand. John was a witness to his illegal practice, and now the doctor was going to get rid of him. John pretended like he didn't notice. He waited for the doctor to get close enough before he grabbed the metal tray covered with the surgical tools and slammed it into the man's face. The doctor toppled backward, a syringe rolling out of his hand. John grabbed it and placed the needle next to his neck. Why did you do this to her? Because she was stupid and thought she wasn't beautiful. John was filled with rage, though it wasn't all directed at this murderous doctor. Half of it was directed at Derek, Mia's ex-husband, the man who had spent years teaching Mia that she was ugly, that she needed fixing. He jabbed the needle into the doctor's neck and injected the knockout liquid that was meant for him. Then, he locked him inside the room with the remains of his wife and walked away. 10 minutes later, he was at Derek's house. He'd never met the man before, but he'd heard plenty of stories about him. As always, Derek was drunk, so it didn't take a lot of effort to convince him to go with John for a free consultation at a brand new medical clinic. John took him back to the warehouse and led him into another operating room, where the drunken idiot sat and waited. By then, the doctor had woken up. Here's the deal. I'll let you leave before I call the police, as long as you do one final surgery. Can you do that? The doctor agreed. Make sure you treat your new patient exactly how you treated Mia. The doctor understood exactly what he meant. So, John led him to the other room where Derek was waiting for what he deserved. John shut the door behind him, feeling the sick thrill of revenge racing through his heart. While the doctor performed his very last surgery, and Derek took his very last breath, John called the police. Despite what he promised, he didn't wait to call them. This story is loosely inspired from a real-life event. In 2025, a 38-year-old man was arrested after an illegal plastic surgery procedure at his home left a 31-year-old woman brain dead. The victim went into cardiac arrest after receiving a lidocaine injection for butt implant removal. The medics discovered a makeshift clinic in his Astoria apartment. The man, unlicensed in the U.S., fled but was arrested at the airport. Prosecutors cited lidocaine toxicity as the likely cause. The victim remained on life support with no brain activity.
My grandma is 92. She refuses to go to a retirement home. Last year, my brother Andy and I decided to move in with her to make sure she didn't hurt herself. It was a difficult situation for both of us, but we loved our grandma very much. We weren't allowed to change much about her house when we moved in, but I made sure to upgrade her TV so that we could watch Netflix. I had a pretty busy job, so I didn't have time to watch a lot of movies. But Andy was home a lot more than I was, and I knew that he had his favorite shows that he always binged. One night, I came home from work while Andy was out with some friends. I checked in on Grandma, who was asleep in her room as usual, and decided to check out Netflix. I was scrolling through the movies when I noticed there were dozens of half-finished documentaries in the continue watching queue. I knew that Andy usually preferred stupid comedies, and I'd literally never seen him watch a documentary before. I started going through the titles and realized that every documentary was about people murdering their family members. It was the kind of true crime stuff that I'd never really seen before. One was about a wife poisoning her husband. Another was about a daughter murdering her parents and then hiding the bodies. But most of them were about children and grandchildren killing off their elderly relatives so they could get their inheritance. At first, I didn't think much of it. I know that when people are binging TV shows, they sometimes go down these weird rabbit holes and end up watching things that you wouldn't expect them to watch. But the more I thought about it, the more unnerved I got. This didn't feel like innocent binge watching. It felt like research. The only explanation I could think of was that Andy was planning on murdering our grandma. We both knew that we were the only beneficiaries in her will. Grandma had a lot of money saved up, and once she died, we'd inherit the house along with millions of dollars. I never would have thought that Andy would be sick enough to hurt someone like our grandma. But just in case, I decided to keep an eye on him. For the next few weeks, I spent more time at home. I started noticing little things, like how Andy always made grandma's meals and organized her medication. Well, I offered to help. He refused. It really seemed like he was hiding something. I never said anything to him or grandma, but I noticed grandma would always glance at him suspiciously whenever he gave her the nightly pills. I also saw that he was watching more of those true crime documentaries on Netflix, though he never watched them when I was in the room. I just saw them pop up in the watch again and continue watching cues. It really should have said something, but I was honestly getting a little scared. One night, I came home early from work and decided to talk to Grandma. I kept things pretty vague, but I asked her how she was feeling and if something was bothering her. She told me that she could barely get out of bed and that she always felt worse after she took her medications. That's when I knew Andy was slowly poisoning her like in those documentaries. I kissed her on the forehead and told her that everything would be okay. About an hour later, Andy got home and walked straight into the kitchen. He didn't realize that I was there. I watched him as he fixed Grandma her tea and organized her pills. When he was finished, I told him that I could take everything up to Grandma's room. He refused, so I made up an excuse about having car problems and asked him to go check it out in the garage. I knew that would keep him distracted long enough. He hurried outside, which gave me enough time to dump out her tea and make a new cup myself. I also took out the pills that he put on her plate and replaced them with the new ones from her medicine box. I figured that if Grandma didn't get sick that night, then I'd know that Andy was poisoning her. I had just finished pouring her replacement tea when a voice shouted at me from the hallway. "What are you doing?" I turned around and saw Grandma glaring at me. I told her that I was just getting her pills ready, but she didn't listen. She started charging toward me. "You're the one poisoning me," she screamed. "I thought it was Andy, but it was you all along." "No," I told her. "I would never." "I saw you," she screamed. "You dumped out my tea and replaced it with poison. You're just as bad as those psychos on TV."
Today we're going to be giving out great couples advice. Tracy wants to know, what's the healthiest part about your relationship?
That's easy. Bridget. Definitely Bridget.
We ain't what you thinking.
This app has changed the game for us.
For sure. Bridget sends you $250 in minutes, no interest, no credit checks. It's that simple.
And it's honestly the most stable we thought as a couple financially.
Facts. We're talking gas, groceries, rent, you name it, Bridget's always been in our corner. So, if you really want some good advice, download Bridget and Slim.
That's when I realized the truth. Grandma was the one watching those documentaries when we weren't around. Andy was never trying to kill her. She just thought that he was. And now her suspicions had turned towards me. I tried to explain myself, but Grandma was hysterical. I'd never seen her move so fast. She slammed me up against the counter and reached around to open a drawer. She pulled out a butcher knife. "I thought you loved me!" she screamed. Before I could move, she took the knife and slammed it straight through my hand and into the kitchen counter. It happened so fast, my brain couldn't register the pain at first. Then she punched me right in the face. I couldn't believe how strong she was for a 90-year-old woman. I tried to move out of the way, but my hand was pinned to the counter. I grabbed the handle of the knife and quickly pulled it out. Then I threw the knife across the room so Grandma couldn't grab it. I started to scream for help, but Grandma grabbed me by the throat and squeezed. I couldn't breathe. With her free hand, she snatched the cup of tea and started pouring the hot liquid down my throat. "Drink it!" she screamed. "Drink your poison!" I coughed up as much as I could. I was slowly blacking out until all of a sudden, Her hand let go of my throat. I fell to the floor, gasping for air. When my eyes could finally focus, I looked up and saw that Andy had returned. He was holding Grandma's arms behind her back. He ordered me to call the police. Andy struggled to hold Grandma in place without hurting her for about 5 minutes. When the ambulance finally arrived, they sedated Grandma and took her away. A paramedic bandaged my mangled hand. All this happened about 3 months ago. Since then, Grandma has been living in an assisted care facility where they've been giving her new medicine to help with her paranoia. Andy and I visit her every week.
We, the beef people of Winn-Dixie, are united to make more perfect barbecues, to amp up your flavors, to stock your block parties, and keep the good times going for all. We, the neighborhood butchers at Winn-Dixie, do declare our dedication to you and to keeping savory traditions alive for the next generations. We are Winn-Dixie. We are the beef people.
Richard and I have been friends forever. We both came from pretty messed up families, and we weren't very popular in school, but we always had each other to rely on. After graduation, I went to community college and got an okay job with a food distributor. Richard started working at McDonald's. We're both in our late 20s now, and Richard still works there. In a way, Richard was jealous of me for making a better life for myself. I often had to loan him money as well. He didn't have to pay me back, and that was okay. He was still a good friend. On the other hand, I was jealous of Richard because he was a lot better looking than me. He went on dates all the time, while I always struggled. I'm a little awkward around women, but Richard helped me out with that. He gave me confidence. He was always my wingman whenever we went out. And most importantly, he set me up with a couple of his female friends. Last month, he introduced me to this great girl. Her name was Rachel, and she was really out of my league. Without Richard, I never would have had a chance with her. After 2 dates, I knew that Rachel was the one I was meant to be with. She was perfect. Then one night, we planned dinner together. Me, Rachel, and Richard. We were supposed to meet at this little fancy Italian restaurant. I was paying, of course. Unfortunately, my boss made me stay late that day, so I got there about half an hour late. Rachel and Richard were already inside. I could see them through the window. They were smiling and laughing. I immediately felt jealous. He was trying to take her from me, and it was working. I watched through the window as he pulled out a single rose and handed it to her. She accepted it and kissed him on the cheek. You're kidding me. Furious, I got back in my car and drove off. I texted Rachel a bit later, apologizing for missing the dinner. She texted me back and said everything was fine. The two of them were having fun without me. I felt like I'd been stabbed in the back. I thought about calling Richard, but I didn't have the nerve. The next day, I was even angrier than before. All I could think about was that stupid Rose. How could my best friend betray me like that? He knew how much I liked Rachel, and he just couldn't let me have her. After fuming for hours, I got in my car and drove straight to McDonald's. I knew Richard would be there, but I didn't know what to do when I arrived. I entered through the back door into the kitchen. Richard was alone, assembling burgers and cooking fries. Hey man, what are you doing here? Seeing his smiling, handsome face made me even angrier. He acted like he didn't do anything wrong. You gave her a rose, I screamed. What? You want Rachel for yourself? Well, you can't have her. He was too shocked to say anything. He stepped closer. Next to him, the oil in the fryer was bubbling loudly. I thought we were friends. After everything I had done for you. Dude, I'm at work. Let's go outside and talk. He reached towards me, acting like I was a crazy person. That's when I punched Richard in the face. I'm not a violent person, and I'd never gotten into any fights before, but my anger and his betrayal had taken over me. He tried to her by the back of the neck and shoved his face directly into the fire. Droplets of hot oil splattered everywhere. Richard grabbed onto the edge of the fire before his nose was in the hot oil, and the droplets were flying into his skin. He bellowed in pain. With all my strength, I tried to shove his face all the way in, and he wouldn't let me. He was a lot stronger. Still, I wouldn't say. He twisted his face side to side. His left cheek made he was losing his strength. You. I told him the rose was from you. I immediately let go. He pulled free. His cheek had bright red. Strips of skin were falling off his face. He stumbled 3 steps towards me before collapsing on the floor. He was still alive, still conscious, but I guess it was too much pain. By then, 2 of his co-workers came out from the front of the restaurant. They had seen what I had done. One of them screamed while the other one ran to Richard to see if he was okay. My anger quickly subsided. I finally realized what I had done. I attacked my best friend for no reason. I misinterpreted everything, and now his face was permanently scarred. I lowered myself to the floor too, whimpering, barely able to breathe. I don't know how long I sat there before the police came and took me away. I was being charged with attempted murder. My lawyer is advising me to take a plea deal, which I probably will. But there's one part of me that thinks I should take whatever punishment that they give me. I should be locked up forever for what I've done. Rachel won't talk to me. Richard's still recovering in the hospital. All I know is I really, really messed up. I'll suffer the consequences for the rest of my life. And I know Richard will, too. In a real incident, a man's wife, let's call him Mr. A, worked at the McDonald's as a manager in training. She called her husband to complain that employees were being disrespectful to her. Mr. A came to the restaurant and physically attacked her cook, punching him in the face, grabbing his neck, and trying to push his head into the deep fryer. Fortunately, other workers stepped in before the cook was seriously hurt. The cook ended up with a swollen forehead, a black eye, and scratches on his neck. Mr. A was arrested and later pleaded guilty to the misdemeanor assault charge. He was sentenced to serve a few weeks in jail.
Chime. Mobile banking. Install and go.
This is a true story which happened with one of our Broccoli fam subscriber on her vacation a few years ago. She and her friend decided to stay in a hostel, and things didn't go down well. The names have been changed for personal reasons.
I had always heard stories about the unexpected chaos that came with staying in hostels. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened during my trip to the sleepy town of Tenghua. A place known for its ancient caves and serene beauty, Tenghua seemed like the perfect spot to slow down for a bit. I had checked into Driftwood Lodge, which was running a promotion. Stayed 3 nights and get the 4th free. Who would say no to that? I took the overnight train into town while my travel companion, Claire, opted for the bus. This meant we arrived at different times and consequently got placed in separate rooms. Driftwood Lodge's dorms were separate 4-person setups with sweet bunk beds and a single dim light bulb hanging from the ceiling. My room seemed fine, just 3 other guys who were quiet and kept to themselves. Claire. The first evening, we met up at the hostel's communal area for drinks. Claire seemed uneasy, shifting in her seat and glancing over her shoulder. When I asked her what was wrong, she hesitated before saying, "It's nothing, really, just my roommates are a little much." "What do you mean?" I pressed.
They're loud and drunk, like really drunk. She shrugged it off, but her forced smile told me there was more to the story. We decided to call it an early night since we had to visit the case the next day. As we walked back to our separate rooms, Claire's expression darkened. I'll be fine, she muttered, almost to herself. The next morning, Claire wasn't at breakfast. After waiting for over an hour, I went to her room to check on her. She opened the door a crack, her face pale and her eyes bloodshot. What happened? I asked, stepping inside. Her voice was barely a whisper. One of the guys tried to get in my bed last night. What? Are you okay? Did you tell someone? My mind was racing. Yeah. I switched rooms after it happened, but he was persistent. She shuddered. He kept saying he just wanted to cuddle. It was disgusting. I insisted we report it to the staff, but Claire waved me off. I'm fine now. I just want to forget about it, she said. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That night, Claire seemed determined to make the most of her stay. We joined a group heading to a local pub, hoping to drown our unease in cheap beer and loud music. But even amidst the laughter and the glasses, Claire's eyes kept darting into the shadows, as if expecting someone to emerge.
Oh my god. Wow. Look at all that.
We returned to the hostel late. The chill midnight air did little to sober us up. Claire had switched to a new room, but when we reached her door, she hesitated. Just until I fall asleep. Of course, I said, pulling up a chair as she climbed into bed. The room was empty, except for us, and I tried to reassure her. It's just a bad coincidence. Everything will be better. She nodded, but didn't say anything. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing soft and steady. I left quietly, making sure the door was locked behind me. The next morning, Claire didn't show up for breakfast again. This time, the door was ajar when I went to check on her. As I stepped inside. Her bed was empty. The sheets rumbled, damp with sweat. Her belongings were scattered across the floor, but there was no sign of Claire. Now, my first thought was that she had left her dog for a walk, but something about the room felt wrong. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, and the light bulb flickered weakly. I went to the reception desk to ask if anyone had seen her. The staff member on duty, a young guy with dark circles under his eyes, frowned. I don't remember her leaving this morning, he said. But maybe she went with one of the tour groups. That didn't sit right with me. Claire wasn't the type to leave without her stuff. I decided to go to nearby cafes and shops, asking anyone I could find if they had seen her. Nobody had. By the time the evening rolled around, panic was setting in. I returned to the hospital straight to the back end. This time, the manager got involved. I checked the security cameras. The footage was grainy, but it showed Claire entering her room the night before. No one else went in or out until the early hours of the morning, when the screen suddenly filled with static. When the feed resumed, Claire's door was open, but the hallway was empty. Maybe she's playing a prank, or... The manager's voice trailed off. She wouldn't do that, I snapped. Something's happened to her. The manager, shaken, called the police. They arrived quickly. 2 officers with tired eyes and a general air of disinterest. They listened to my story, their expressions remaining unchanged. Look, kid, one of them said, these things happen. Maybe she got carried away, had a bit too much to drink, and decided to go for a walk. Happens all the time. But she wouldn't leave without her
phone, her wallet. I argued, frustration bubbling up. Maybe she met someone, got swept off her feet. The other officer shrugged. Young people, you know how they are. Their dismissive attitude fueled my anger. I demanded to see Claire's roommate from the first night, the one she had complained about.
Dozen riders have been caught in a detail of one of the settings.
Do you need extra cash this week? Download Empower and get approved for up to $300 with cash advance. No credit check, late fees, or interest. It's just the money you need when you need it.
The manager hesitated, but eventually relented, leading me to a small room at the back of the hostel. The man looked up from his book, startled. He had a shifty look in his eyes and a bruise blooming on his cheek. "What do you want?" he demanded. "I want to know where Claire is," I said, my voice trembling with rage. He scoffed. "I don't know anything. She was acting crazy, that's all." I didn't believe him. I lunged at him, but he was quicker than he looked. He grabbed my wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. The next thing I knew, I was pinned to the wall, hard, once, twice, 3 times. I screamed, writhing in pain and fear. He laughed, a cruel, guttural sound. "See? You like that, don't you?" I managed to break free, scrambling away from him, my eyes wide with terror. I fled the hostel, my mind racing. I had to find Claire. I spent the next few hours searching frantically, checking every hotel, every guest house in town. Finally, I found her at a small family-run hotel on the outskirts. She was hiding in a corner of the lobby, her face pale and drawn, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and shame. We rushed back to the police station, Claire trembling as she recounted the events of the previous night. The officers listened, their expressions unchanged. "You should have been more careful," one of them said. "These things happen when you travel alone." "But he assaulted her!" I cried. "He tried to force himself on her!" The officers exchanged a glance. "Well, she shouldn't have been so easy," one of them muttered. Tears streamed down Claire's face. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. We left the police station defeated and broken. There was no justice for us here. We bought tickets for the first train out of Tanghua, leaving behind the horror of the past few days. The journey back was a blur of silent misery. We didn't speak for hours, each lost in our own thoughts. The incident in Tanghua left a deep scar on both of us. The carefree spirit of our trip was shattered, replaced by a lingering sense of fear and distrust. We learned a harsh lesson that night. Sometimes the world is not as safe as we like to believe. And sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you fail you miserably.
The story is inspired from a true incident, in which a breakup turned ugly, and a man shot his wife. More on this after the story. I'd been married to Michael for 3 years. He was a wonderful husband, and he always treated me right. But over time, I started to suspect that he was involved with the mob. He always transferred large amounts of money into our bank account. He'd leave in the middle of the night to go on side jobs. but he never told me what he actually did. He also had some business associates that gave me a really bad feeling. They all acted like characters in Sopranos. No matter how many times I asked him about it, he always changed the subject. About a month ago, we had his family over for his birthday. In the middle of the festivities, Michael got a phone call and had to run off without an explanation. I thought that was really shady. I asked his mom, Doris, if she knew anything, as I expected. She had no idea. It's best not to ask. It felt like Michael had this secret life that he was hiding from everyone. And if I wanted our marriage to work, I had to keep ignoring it. I couldn't do that, though. I could barely sleep anymore. I kept wondering what Michael was doing, and I worried he was mixed up in something terrible. All of my friends were also Michael's friends, so I didn't have anyone to confide in, and I definitely couldn't talk to his family. They'd chosen a long time ago to purposely ignore everything. The only person I could really talk to was my college friend, Jack. He never met Michael before, so I felt comfortable telling him everything. With Jack's encouragement, I finally decided to leave Michael. Valentine's Day was coming up, so I decided to have one final Valentine's Day with him before I left. I already had my suitcase packed, but I hid it in the closet so Michael wouldn't find it. We had a Valentine's dinner at our house, and everything felt safe and normal. I was starting to have second thoughts about leaving, but I knew that I should trust my gut. Halfway through the dinner, Michael got a call on his cell and left the room. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but it sounded pretty shady.
Just take care of it.
That was the last straw. I immediately texted Jack and asked him to come pick me up. I couldn't live like this anymore. When Michael came back into the room, I acted like nothing had happened. I tried to act natural, but he could tell that I was upset. He looked me dead in the eyes and said,
So I noticed a suitcase in the closet. Would you like to explain?
I didn't know what to say.
Do you want to leave me?
That was my chance. It was finally time to tell him. I said that I wasn't happy anymore. I told him I still loved him, but I couldn't live with someone who kept so many secrets from me. I told him that I was worried that he was mixed up in something dangerous, something illegal. He listened to me, silently typing something into his phone. Then he asked me the same question again.
I think something's happening to us.
Listen to what you're saying.
The pull, the thirst in your bones.
Ow!
I'm stuck. I'm sorry. I can't explain it. We're sick.
Whiskey for the pain.
By the way, I'm sorry I didn't believe you before you were ready. Just go.
Do you want to leave me?
Yes. He nodded.
I guess that's your choice. I won't stop you.
I believed him. We finished the rest of our dinner, talking about all the good times we had together. Then Jack pulled up to the front of the house. Michael waited silently at the table while I went upstairs and got my luggage. When I came back down, I took one last look at Michael. He wouldn't look me in the eyes. I walked out the door, my heart breaking. I didn't trust my husband anymore, but I knew he'd be true to his word. He wouldn't try to stop me. Jack was waiting in his truck, looking a little nervous. I dragged my suitcase across the lawn, approaching him. As I hoisted my stuff into the back of his truck, I heard the front door of the house creak open behind me. I assumed that Michael was there, watching me leave. Then, I noticed Jack's eyes widen in surprise. A gunshot rang through the air and Jack slumped over. He was shot right in the forehead. Terrified, I ran to the other side of the truck and hid. Michael had shot him. Oh God. But when I looked up at the house, Michael wasn't standing there. Doris was, his own mother. She had a gun in her hands pointed right at me. No one leave my son! She shot me, but I was safe behind the truck. A bullet ricocheted off the side of it. I couldn't believe it. Michael wasn't the only criminal in his family. All of them were working together, including his mother. He must have texted her that I was leaving him, and she came here to stop me. I had to get out of there. Well, Michael and his mother fought over the gun. I made a run for it. I ran down the dark street and kept going until I rounded the corner. I hid in a neighbor's yard and called the police. By the time the cops got there, Jack and his truck were gone. Doris was gone too, and my husband stayed in the house, alone. He told them he had no idea why I'd called the police. A few cops interviewed me, but none of them believed my story. I knew at least one of them was in cahoots with Michael and his criminal family. That was the only explanation that made any sense. They advised me to just go back home. They called me if Jack ever showed up. I didn't, of course. I'm staying with my sister. I know that Michael will come after me, but I'm not so sure about his family. Yesterday, Jack's truck was found by the side of a road. There were no signs of his body. When Tamika Peterson wanted to break up with a 3-time state prison veteran Gibson Paul on February 14th, she was shot by him. Tamika used to live with him in Riviera Beach, but she wanted to leave him. She sat in the car, but Paul took out a pistol and shot Tamika till she died. Another woman was also injured. After this, 29-year-old Gibson Paul fled to Tennessee, but his cell phone showed he was in Kingsport. Paul was taken away from a hotel. He was sentenced to life in prison.
This is why I always bring my phone into the ocean. The colors, the calm, the magic. But straight out of my phone doesn't always look like what it felt in the moment. That's why I use Adobe Lightroom on mobile. It makes my ocean photos come to life. First, I use the new Scene Enhance feature to tweak each section like the water. Then I adjust the light, I adjust the exposure, contrast, shadows, and highlights to make the subject pop. Then I'll adjust colors since underwater shots usually need a temp boost to warm up the scene and bring back the blues and greens. Or if they turn too blue, you can adjust these sliders to make the photos true to the colors I saw underwater. And finally, a little sharpening and noise reduction for that crisp, dreamy finish. From hazy to hero shot in under a minute, all from my phone. Lightroom just gets it.
This story is inspired from a true incident, which happened with 3 families in Washington. I will tell you more about it later. It was a Wednesday morning, and I arrived at the office with my usual lunch in hand. My supervisor, Mr. Reynolds, was waiting outside my cubicle, arms crossed, his face tight with anger. The moment I stepped into the office, he motioned for me to follow him. It was unusual. He never came out to greet anyone personally, let alone me. A prick of unease, but I had no idea what was coming. Inside his office, he closed the door with a loud thud and turned to face me. "Jennifer," he said, his tone grim, "I want you to explain these messages." He shoved his phone under my nose. The screen showed screenshots of vile text messages sent from my number, laced with obscenities and lewd offers. My heart hammered in my chest. I don't understand," I stammered. "These weren't for me. Someone must have hacked my phone." I glanced at the timestamps. They were sent in the middle of the night. I had been asleep at the time. Mr. Reynolds shook his head. "That's not all." He pulled up another folder on his computer. Confidential files from our client's account were leaked late last night. The IP address was traced to your work laptop. His usually calm, fatherly face was replaced with betrayal and disgust. I tried to form words, but nothing coherent came out. My thoughts spun, and the room suddenly felt airless. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was my boyfriend, Tyler. Relieved to have a familiar voice to ground me, I answered, but Tyler's harsh tone was almost frantic. "Jen, what the hell's going on?" he shouted. "Why did you post those videos of us? Our private videos online?" My blood went cold. I could barely get out a whisper. "Tyler," I said, my voice shaking, "I didn't post anything. I've been hacked, I swear." "Don't lie to me," he seethed, and then the line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling as though my entire world was crashing in on me. It dawned on me that whoever had leaked the office files had also accessed my personal data. I tried to explain this to Mr. Reynolds, but his face remained unmoved. "Clean out your desk," he said, voice taut with fury. "I don't want you in this building until we figure out what's going on." I left his office in a daze. My colleagues stared at me, some with pity, others with suspicion. My hands trembled as I packed my belongings into a cardboard box. I felt tears threatening to spill over, but I held them back. The last thing I needed was to break down in front of everyone. Halfway through packing, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother, sounding more rattled than I'd ever heard her. "Jennifer, are you okay? We got these texts. They're threatening us. Your father is worried sick. Something about us paying the price if you don't keep your mouth shut." "Mom, I trailed off, feeling as though I had stepped into a nightmare. "Listen, I didn't send those. Someone is hacking me, trying to ruin my life. Please, go to the police and show them the messages." Her voice shook. "We will, but be careful, sweetie. Whoever this is, they seem dangerous."
Dunkin' Refreshers. Get a $3 medium for Dunkin' Rewards members.
After we hung up, I took a moment to steady myself. My family was now in the crosshairs because of some twisted vendetta. I turned and almost collided with my best friend at work, a marketing associate named Brooke. She'd been among the onlookers, but had broken away to see if I was all right. "What's going on?" she whispered, helping me throw the last of my pens and notebooks into the box. I could barely speak. "I'm being framed," I rasped. "I need to go to the police." She nodded, clutching my arm in support. "I believe you. Let me know if there's anything I can do." With that small comfort, I left the building, feeling as though I had been banished from a place that had once been my refuge. Down at the local police station, I could hardly catch my breath. An officer named Harris took my statement. "Do you have any enemies?" he asked gently. "Someone who might want to hurt you in such a personal and far-reaching way?" I frowned, thinking back over the last few months. Then a name flashed in my mind. Martin Powell. "There was a guy named Martin," I said, feeling a sudden chill. "He used to work at the company. He was fired 2 weeks ago after I raised concerns about his behavior and performance. But..." I hesitated, guilt gnawing at me. "He was actually very dedicated. The real reason he got fired might have been office politics. I never expected him to go to this extreme." Harris nodded gravely. "We'll look into him. In the meantime, make sure you secure all your accounts. Phone, email, social media, and let your family know to do the same. We'll keep you posted." The next day, I got a text from an unknown number. "Your life is about to crumble piece by piece. Shouldn't have messed with me." I dropped my phone in horror. There was no doubt now. Martin was behind this. He wanted me to suffer. In a panic, I called Harris. "He just threatened me again," I said breathlessly. "Send me the screenshot," he replied. "We're closing in on him, but we need more evidence. We got a warrant to check into his situation. Stay safe. Don't try to confront him alone." Tyler finally agreed to talk, though his trust in me was shaken. We met at a coffee shop. The moment I saw him, I ran into his arms, tears streaming down. "I'm so sorry," I sobbed. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "I'm sorry I doubted you. It's just, those videos were so personal. I couldn't believe you put them out there. It felt like such a betrayal." I saw the hurt in his eyes and felt my guilt well up. "It wasn't me," I assured him. "I promise I'll make this right." He nodded slowly. True to his word, Detective Harris contacted me 2 days later. "Jennifer," he said, We've tracked the source of those malicious texts in the final weeks. We believe he acted alone, hacking your phone and computer through a backdoor program. Relief washed over me, though my nerves still felt raw. So, what happens now? He cleared his throat. We've placed him under arrest. He tried to flee the state, but we caught him at the bus station. We have enough evidence to charge him with cyberstalking, extortion, and unauthorized computer access. On the 25th of June, 2007, 3 families in Washington reported a terrifying ordeal, claiming their cell phones were hacked and turned against them. The harassment began with threatening calls and texts, including chilling death threats. The stalkers seemed to know their every move, from their clothing to private conversations, even recording interactions with police. Investigators traced the calls back to the victims' phones, even when turned off, leaving authorities and phone companies mystified. Experts suggested advanced hacking techniques might have transformed their phones into spying devices. Despite months of investigation, the identity of the restricted caller remained unknown, leaving the family shaken and the case unresolved.
This story is inspired from a true incident which happened with our subscriber, Robbie. He was working as a barista at that time and encountered a strange mother-son duo. More about the incident after this story. I used to believe a coffee shop was the last place where genuine horrors could unfold. I've been working in one for 2 years, and my days typically involved comforting aromas, cheerful chatter, and the soothing hum of the espresso machines. Little did I know how profoundly one seemingly ordinary encounter would warp my reality. My name is Robbie, and what happened with that mother and her adult son still haunts me to this day. I remember the day in question vividly. It was late summer, around 6 in the evening, and my shift was supposed to end at 7. The fluorescent lights inside the shop flickered, casting a strangely uneasy glow on the counters. I was behind the register rearranging pastries that no one seemed interested in buying, when an older woman with stiffly permed gray hair swept in. Her son, or at least that's who he seemed to be, followed close behind. He was middle-aged, probably in his mid-40s, with shoulders that slumped as though he bore the weight of 1,000 regrets.
At BetterHelp, we have made starting therapy easy. When you sign up, we'll ask you some questions about yourself and what you're looking for in therapy. We use this information to match you to a licensed therapist. Your therapist will then introduce themselves and ask you some questions to get to know you better. When you're ready, you can navigate over to the scheduling tool to book your first live session. You can choose live chat, phone, or video call. Get started on your therapy journey today with BetterHelp.
You won't believe it. Download Pocket FM and listen to my Vampire System for free now.
The woman's demeanor struck me immediately. She lifted her chin high, surveying the menu board with unimpressed eyes. I cleared my throat, forcing the usual courtesy into my voice. "Hello, ma'am. What can I get started for you?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. She snapped her gaze to me as if she were surprised a human being would speak. "I want an iced cappuccino," she said, the words tumbling out with a sneer. Her son gave a brief, nervous nod. I'd seen countless customers confuse our iced cappuccino with a frappuccino, and I just wanted to clarify to avoid disappointment. It was part of my job, after all, to ensure that people got what they actually wanted. So, gently, I smiled and leaned forward. "Ma'am," I started. "We can make an iced cappuccino, of course, but it won't be blended and sweet like a frappuccino." "Are you sure you..." Sharp glare and rolling her eyes. "What are you babbling about?" she asked, turning to her son. "He's not making any sense. I said iced cappuccino." Her son glanced at me. "She wants a cappuccino," he muttered, as though that explained everything. I tried again. "I just want to make sure. Maybe you'd prefer a frappuccino if you're looking for something sweet and blended? My voice was calm, but inside I felt my patience slipping. She was staring at me like I was a nuisance. No, she growled, lip curled in disdain. I want an iced cappuccino. Right, I said, punching it into the register. That'll be $4.25. May I have your name for the order? She swiped her card. Rebecca. Her son leaned on the counter, adding, "And I'm James." I scribbled both names on the cups, ignoring the strange tension that hung in the air. Something about the way Rebecca kept glancing at James felt off, like she was testing whether he dared to contradict her. I handed them the receipts. As the espresso dripped, my mind wandered. I'd dealt with rude customers before, but there was a strangely personal, venomous quality in Rebecca's tone that made my skin crawl. She'd spoken to me as though I were less than human, a blot on her otherwise perfect day. When I turned back around, I caught them bickering in whispers. "You should be more careful," Rebecca hissed. "We don't want any slip-ups this time." James nodded rapidly. I know, but we still have to." He paused as he realized I was watching them. They exchanged uneasy looks as though I'd overheard a secret. An uneasy feeling twined in my gut. I handed Rebecca her iced cappuccino, foam haphazardly layering the top. James took a simple latte. They walked off to the corner table, never once thanking me or even pretending to be polite. I watched them settle in, and a chill brushed the back of my neck. I couldn't explain why I felt so uneasy. About 15 minutes later, out of nowhere, Rebecca stormed back up to the counter. She plunked the drink down with a vicious thud. "This," she spat, "is not what I wanted." I calmly replied, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I tried to explain it would just be espresso and cold milk over ice." "This is disgusting." She looked ready to fling the cup at me. I forced a smile. "I can remake it. Or, if you'd prefer," James cut in, shifting from foot to foot. "She wants something cold and sweet, like that frappuccino you mentioned." The tension between mother and son was palpable. It felt like they were on the verge of a more significant argument, but they masked it with the coffee confusion. Rebecca gave me a look of sheer loathing. But she said, "Fine. Do that." I nodded, rung up the new drink, quietly voiding the charge so they wouldn't have to pay twice, and set about making a mocha frappuccino. While the blender whirled, I realized how quickly my sense of professional courtesy was wearing thin. I'd been barked at many times over trivial mix-ups, but this felt more personal, more sinister. I glanced around. My coworker, Beth, was busy steaming milk for a cappuccino. She shot me a sympathetic look as though to say, "Hang in there." I finished making the frappuccino and slid it across the counter. Rebecca took a sip, sneered, and walked away without a word. James followed like a chastised dog. Normally, that would be the end of such an encounter. They'd leave, and I'd never see them again. But for some reason, fate had other plans. When my shift ended, I stepped into the cool evening air. The sky was painted with streaks of pink and purple, the day retreating into dusk. I felt relief flood my chest, until I noticed a figure lingering by a lamppost across the street. It was James, alone, his eyes tracking me. I paused. The rational part of my mind told me to ignore him, get on my bus, and go home. Yet, curiosity and a creeping sense of dread tugged at me.
What a beautiful day. Oh no! Oh yes, some cash for me. Yeah, community chest. Let's get some action. Time to go. Fresh new landmark in the city. Oh, what? Shield on time. Monopoly Go. Play now.
Finally, I willed myself forward. As I neared him, he turned his head sharply as though trying to decide whether to speak or run. I decided to break the silence first. James, is everything okay? He looked exhausted, the lines on his face deeper than they had seemed before. He hesitated, glancing around to ensure we were alone. He began, his voice cracking. I'm sorry about earlier. My mother can be difficult. I nodded slowly. It happens. Customers can be tough. James was silent for a moment, his gaze distant. Then, in a hushed tone, he said, I wish that's all it was. But there's more. She's not my mother. My heart hammered as soon as I heard those words. What do you mean? He rubbed his temples. She's an imposter. My real mother died years ago. This woman, she looks like her, sounds like her, but she isn't her. A chill crawled up my spine. I couldn't fathom what he was implying. Was he suffering from delusions? Was this a scam of some sort? Either way, I felt a surge of apprehension. James, that's a serious claim. Are you in danger? He swallowed hard, eyes darting nervously. Yes. Before I could ask more, headlights sliced through the gloom. Rebecca's silhouette appeared behind the car window, and she slammed the horn with a long, grating honk. James backed away from me, terror etched on his face. I have to go, he whispered. Look, I need your help. If you hear from me again, please believe what I'm telling you. He sprinted off towards the car. I stood there, dumbfounded, as Rebecca glowered at me from the driver's seat. Then she tore away, leaving black tire marks on the asphalt. The bus arrived a moment later, but I barely registered it. That night, I barely slept. My mind raced with questions. Who was this woman? If she wasn't really James' mother, why was she posing as such? And why would they show up at my cafe? The next morning, I found a note slipped under my apartment door. It was scrawled on the back of a coffee shop receipt. Meet me tonight, 9 p.m., Old Grove Park. Jay. My heart pounded, a mixture of alarm and curiosity. 1,000 thoughts told me to ignore it, yet something about James's desperation made me feel responsible. When night fell, I drove to Old Grove Park. The place was deserted except for a few flickering lampposts. I spotted James sitting on a bench, head bowed. The hush of the park magnified every rustle, every distant car horn, every footstep on gravel. I approached cautiously. James?
No ads, no ads, no ads. King Shot brings you endless fun without any breaks. It's totally free. Jump into awesome tower defense action. Play round after round to your heart's content and feel the thrill every time you win. Download now and enjoy hours of pure gaming joy.
said in a hushed tone. Some inheritance left by my father, but the documents require my mother's signature. The real one's signature. She's been forging everything. And if I don't cooperate, she threatens to do awful things. I felt my skin crawl. What awful things? He shook his head, trembling. I don't know all the details, but she's done this before, to other families. She takes the identity of someone's dead mother or aunt. She has a surgeon friend, gives her the desired face, uses their grief, confuses them, manipulates them. She's dangerous. My heart hammered. So, what can I do? He opened his mouth, but a sound in the distance made us both freeze. Footsteps. Emerging from the trees, Rebecca advanced, her face half lit by a lamppost's glow. I had never seen a gaze so full of hate. She clutched a small revolver in her gloved hand, the steel glinting in the dim light. James, she purred, her voice dripping with malice. You've been a very bad son. I raised my hands instinctively, voice trembling. Please, let's talk about this. She leveled the gun at me. Shut up, she hissed, and stay out of our business. James stepped forward, voice shaking. You can't keep doing this, he yelled. I won't let you. Rebecca turned the gun on him. My heart lurched. In that split second, I flung myself at her, knocking her arm to the side. The gun went off, the bullet lodging in a nearby tree. She staggered, and James seized her wrist, forcing the weapon from her hand. We wrestled her to the ground, adrenaline pulsing wildly, until the gun slid out of reach. She thrashed and clawed at us, but we held on until the distant wail of police sirens filled the night. The officers took her into custody, James and I explaining everything as best we could. They didn't reveal much in that moment, but I learned later that Rebecca was a professional con artist involved in multiple cases of fraud and identity theft. She targeted lonely individuals who had lost family members, worming her way into their lives with the promise of a mother's love, only to strip them of finances and assets. James was just her latest pawn. And the real incident, Robbie never met James after the night he told him that the woman was not his real mother. Robbie told me that he has never, ever seen the look of dread which was on James's face that night. He got even more terrified when his fake mother honked the car. He simply rushed towards the car and they drove away. Quite a bizarre incident.
Today we're going to be giving out great couples advice. Tracy wants to know, what's the healthiest part about your relationship?
That's easy. Bridget. Definitely Bridget.
That ain't what you think.
This app has changed the game for us.
For sure. Bridget sends you $250 in minutes. No interest, no credit checks. It's that simple.
And it's honestly the most stable we thought as a couple financially.
Facts. We're talking gas, groceries, rent, you name it, Bridget's always been in our corner. So, if you really want some good advice, download Bridget. Thank you for listening.
This is a true story which happened with one of our Broccoli fam subscriber on his vacation. He was sleeping peacefully in his hostel bunk bed when suddenly one of the girl brought a homeless man into the hostel at night. Things went crazy afterwards.
The insistent hammering on the door jolted me awake. It was 3 a.m., and the only sound that should be disturbing the nocturnal peace of the shared dormer in the Casa Sol hostel was the distant murmur of the Barcelona night. Groaning, I rolled over, burying my head deeper her into the pillow, willing the noise to cease. But it didn't. I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes and peering through the gloom at my roommates. Maya, oblivious to the commotion, snored softly, her face half buried in a mountain of crumpled sheets. Chloe, however, was wide awake, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "What the hell is going on?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I shrugged, equally bewildered. "I don't know." The hammering stopped abruptly, replaced by a muffled argument. A woman's voice raised in a furious tirade, interspersed with the slurred ramblings of a man. I slipped out of bed, heart pounding, and tiptoed towards the door. Peeking through the narrow window, I saw the scene that made my blood run cold. Standing in the hallway, swaying precariously, was Elena, her face flushed and contorted in a drunken rage. Beside her, slumped against the wall, was a man, his clothes tattered and filthy. He smelled of stale beer and something I couldn't quite place. Decay, perhaps. Elena was screaming at him, her words a torrent of unintelligible Spanish. The man, oblivious to her fury, seemed more interested in the discarded pizza box lying on the ground. He rummaged through it with his grimy fingers, pulling out a half-eaten slice and stuffing it into his mouth. Suddenly, the man lurched forward, his hand outstretched towards Elena. She stumbled back, shrieking, and collided with the doorframe. The man, seemingly unaware of her, continued his lurching progress down the hallway, muttering to himself. Elena, regaining her balance, stormed back into the dorm room, her eyes blazing with a manic energy. "He's disgusting," she hissed, her voice barely a whisper. "I picked him up from the street. He was begging for money, and I felt sorry for him. He said he was hungry, so I bought him dinner, and this is how he repays me?"
From senior to childcare to pets and more, the new Care.com makes it easier than ever to find the care you need. And you don't have to hire just anyone. You can find a background-checked caregiver who's the right fit for you. Join now and find care at Care.com.
He slammed the door shut, the sound echoing through the small room. Maya stirred, groaning, but didn't wake up. Chloe, however, was staring at Elena with a mixture of horror and disbelief. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You brought a homeless man back to our dorm?" Elena scoffed. "He's not homeless. He's just down on his luck. He lost his job, his family, and he probably has every disease known to man," Chloe retorted. "Elena, you can't just bring random strangers back here. This is a hostel, not a charity shelter." Elena ignored her, pacing frantically around the room. "He's harmless. He just needs a little help." Just then, a loud banging sound erupted from the hallway. Elena froze, her eyes wide with fear. "What was that?" Chloe whispered, her voice barely audible. We all held our breath, listening intently. The banging continued, growing louder, more insistent. "I think we should call the hostel staff," Chloe said, her voice trembling. Elena hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. We called the front desk, explaining the situation as calmly as possible. The receptionist, a young woman with a bored expression, promised to send someone up immediately. A few minutes later, a burly man appeared at the door. He looked at the scene before him. Elena, her face pale and drawn, Chloe and I, looking decidedly uneasy, and the faint stench of stale beer and something vaguely unpleasant hanging in the air, and raised an eyebrow. "What in the name of all that is holy is going on here?" he demanded. Elena, emboldened emboldened by the presence of the hostile staff, launched into a rambling explanation, her voice rising in indignation. The man listened patiently, occasionally shaking his head in disbelief. Finally, he turned to the door and knocked loudly. "Senor," he called out in a booming voice, "please come out. This is a private dorm. You are not welcome here." There was a long silence, then a muffled groan from the other side of the door. The hostile staff exchanged a nervous glance with us. "I don't think he understands," he muttered. He turned and knocked again, this time more forcefully. "Por favor, salga!" Suddenly, the door burst open. The man, his eyes bloodshot and glazed over, stood in the doorway, a broken beer bottle clutched in his hand. The sight of the shattered glass sent a wave of panic through us. The staff recoiled, his eyes wide with terror. Chloe screamed, and I instinctively ducked behind Elena. The man lunged forward, the broken bottle raised high. The staff, agile despite his size, sidestepped the attack, but the man lost his balance and stumbled backwards, crashing into the wall. The bottle slipped from his grasp, clattering to the floor. He groaned, clutching his hand, which was bleeding profusely. "Oh my God," Elena whispered, her face pale. "I think he cut himself." The staff, recovering from the shock, rushed forward and tried to disarm the injured man. But the man, fueled by a potent mix of alcohol and rage, lashed out, flailing wildly. He managed to land a glancing blow on the uniform, who stumbled back, cursing under his breath. The situation quickly escalated into a chaotic melee. The injured man, despite his injuries, was surprisingly strong and agile. He lunged at the staff, who fought back with a mixture of fear and surprising dexterity. Elena, overcome with fear, began to sob uncontrollably. Chloe, her face white, grabbed my arm, her grip so tight that it hurt. "We need to call the police," she gasped. I nodded, my fingers trembling as I dialed the emergency number. The police arrived within minutes. 2 officers, their faces grim, pushing through the crowd that had gathered in the hallway. The injured man, sensing the arrival of the authorities, made a desperate attempt to flee. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the blood that was pouring from his hand, and bolted down the hallway, disappearing into the labyrinthine corridors of the hostel. The police officers exchanged a look of concern. "He's a danger to himself and others," one of them muttered, his eyes following the man's retreating figure. The incident left a deep scar on our stay in Barcelona. The image of the man, his eyes wild with rage, the broken bottle glinting menacingly in the dim light, haunted my dreams for weeks to come.
Open a Chime checking account in 2 minutes. We'll spot you up to $200 for the new year and beyond. Apply now. Artlist.io.
Man, I made all these burgers, but I got no one to share them with.
More moments later.
Alright, time to finally game with my friends. Are you kidding? It's 3 a.m. I'm going to bed. Come on! Who else am I supposed to play with? Why out alone? Why not together? And why not survival? You can meet players from all over the world who will have your back as you work together to keep from freezing solid. You can work together in an alliance and trade for supplies. Or take your supplies by force and make sure your enemies get eaten by polar bears. Whiteout Survival is free to play with no ads, and new players will get a free SSR here on Molly when they download the game. So download Whiteout Survival now and start making friends across the world. Whiteout Survival. Play free now.
This story is inspired from a true incident which Barney and Betty Hill encountered during their trip to New Hampshire. By the end of this story, you will be left with a lot of questions. I remember the night it all began as if I were recalling someone else's life. My wife, Jessica, and I were driving driving back from a late dinner at Victor's, a cozy restaurant just outside our neighborhood. We were tired, but content, chatting about the delicious tiramisu we had shared for dessert. The headlights illuminated the deserted roads, and the hum of the engine was strangely soothing. Suddenly, everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, daylight poured through the bedroom windows. At first, I thought I had simply fallen asleep the moment we got home. I groaned, convinced we had overslept. But the clock on the nightstand read 10 a.m. Now, that alone wasn't alarming. Jessica and I sometimes slept in on weekends. What scared me was the date on my phone's lock screen. 5 days had passed since our evening at Victor's. I shook Jessica awake. She stared at me, eyes wide with confusion, then snatched her phone. Her reaction mirrored my own. Disbelief, alarm, and an unshakable sense of dread. We both felt physically fine, though somewhat groggy. We couldn't remember anything beyond the moment our car's headlights swept across the empty street 5 nights before. As we dressed and headed outside, we found the entire neighborhood in an uproar. Mrs. Henderson, who lived across the street, rushed towards us, still in her slippers. She looked pale and shaken. "John? Jessica? Where have you been?" she demanded. I